Jesus said, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." Then he told them a parable. "Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is already near. So also when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on guard so that your hearts are not weighted down with dispensation and drunkenness and the worries of this life. And that day catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that will take place and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Our strength and our Redeemer.
Amen.
Please be seated. First of all, welcome to Advent. This is the day when the church year begins again. It is our Happy New Year day. And so we begin Advent, and we also begin in the Gospel of Luke this year. We will be in the Gospel of Luke this year, and Luke is notorious for being what some call the social gospel. Some talk about Luke in ways that help us kind of understand how it is we're supposed to be with each other, how it is we're supposed to care for each other, not only one-on-one, but as a community. Not as an aside, but as an important note, Luke is the only one that talks about women and uses their name. So we enter the Gospel of Luke this morning, and we enter Advent, a season of active waiting. Not a season of apathy or kind of coasting, waiting it out till we get the right present. Not that anybody's ever felt that way. But a season of wondering. Be on guard so that your hearts are not weighed down with the dispensation and drunkenness and the worries of this life. Do not be weighed down by the worries of this life. We are in this place of waiting, of making room. How is it that we can remind ourselves that it is God that walks with us, no matter where we are, no matter what we think, no matter what our circumstances? Whether those circumstances are in our own lives whether they're in our church or our community lives or in the world. So Luke is kind of going to lead us through this year in whatever way we feel moved. But we know that Advent is a time of darkness, not like Lent. Back in the old days, they were both what we called penitential seasons. And so they were both things where you really look at all the things that were wrong, and you were really, very like, okay, I'm a sinner, I need to do better, and then I'll see Jesus. This time, I want us to imagine how it is that we can stay present enough to see God in our life. How is it that we can stay present enough and open enough to see those inbreaking of God? Because let's be clear, even though we kind of, we enter into the season as an Episcopalians, we're very liturgical people, which means we dress in blue and we pretend we're in that place. But we're both and people. So we know that today we begin that journey of wondering how will it be different when that light of God is born? How will we be changed? But we already know the answer. We already know that God will be born. We know how the story ends. We know how the liturgy, you can read ahead. The chapters are there. Luke was written a while ago. You can read ahead and see what happens. But on this day, we're called to be both and. We're called to be present, and we're called to see the bigger picture. And so, how is it that we do that? Insight into my brain, I apologize. There's a show called Alone, if anybody's ever watched it. It is a show where 10 contestants are dropped in the middle of just wilderness, harsh wilderness. They're far apart, and they are there to be alone. They don't see anybody else. They don't know anybody else is around. They have to surrender themselves. They have to tap out. And we started watching a season last night, and I was reminded about each person was asked why they'd said yes to this. And I don't think any of them, they do different characters as you go along, I don't think any of them last night said, I'm going to show everybody that I am strong and fit and I'm going to win all the money. They all want the money. But each one of them had a story. Each one of them, one who had been a police officer and had been in the service and had seen a lot of tragedy. And she was like, I need to be out here. I've taken care of everybody else all my life. I need to hear my story. I need to come to terms with my story. There was another guy who was a veteran, such a good guy, and he was all excited, and he was going to go and he was going to win this money for his family, and he had done really well in the service, and he knew this was going to be a no-brainer, and he showed up, and he saw bear scat. Poor guy went home the first day, he didn't even get a sleepover. He was just like, I don't think I'm built for this, but he was just, all of a sudden, before he went, he's like, we're going to make the bears, you've got to run away from me. Right? All of a sudden it was like, the bears get to have their home. Each person gets to bring 10 items of their choice. They get to bring 10 items of their choice. So as we imagine this Advent, and we imagine kind of being on our own journey toward waiting for that light of God to be born in that manger. We have all the stuff whizzing around us. I know we're not landed in the wilderness. But what would it be like for us to wonder, what would we bring? What would your 10 items bring? I'm going to ask us just for a minute to think about 5 items for Advent. No, it's a leap. We're not in the deep woods of Canada. I am very grateful for one, that there should be no bear scat in my lawn when I get home, because I watch these shows and say to myself, I wouldn't even go. I don't know why did they do such a stupid thing? I don't know. I wouldn't have even gotten on the boat. So let's not be judging the poor guy that didn't get a sleepover. So what would you bring? How is this Advent going to be different for you? Because for some of us, we are worried. We are worried about things outside of ourselves. Maybe we're worried about a diagnosis or a health problem that we just didn't expect, or maybe we did expect and it's still a bummer. For some of us, we're worried about jobs or lack of jobs. Maybe we have a job and we can't stand it, but we feel like we need to stay until we figure it out. Don't let those things in your life we hear in the gospel this morning keep you away from doing this work. Maybe it's finances. Maybe you're on a committee at church and you have had enough of all of us, and you're like, you guys can take Jesus out of anything. I need to go back to praying. You're not allowed to. No. So whatever it is, maybe you're worried about the world right now. You're not alone in any of those situations. We know that God is with us, but we need to be present. Because if we let the noise around us overwhelm us, we can't see the good news, no matter what you think the good news is. So if I had 5 things to bring on my Advent journey, because I could take you hostage, but I'm going to try and keep this simple. You know me, but anybody that works with me knows, pray. You've heard me say it over and over again at the beginning of COVID, and I didn't know what to do. I know how to pray. You know how to pray. You can pray in the woods. You can pray on a walk. You can pray in a treadmill and elliptical. You can pray in this building or other buildings. You can pray on Facebook. You can pray in person. You can, I feel like a Sesame Street ad. You can pray anywhere you want. Talk to God. Bring your prayer. Pretend you are kind of out on your own in the wilderness. Read things that matter. And I'm not even talking politics. Actually, I mean none. You should read those, that's your own life. For us, in this particular bag, I'm talking about your faith, read like you're going to have some options. We've got we've got reading material. Maybe you've got a book at home. Maybe you want to read the Gospel of Luke and wonder, what was she talking about? Maybe you want to join us in lectionary. Maybe you have a book you bought at home and you've been saying to yourself, I was going to read that. I've been wanting to read that for 4 years. Take that extra 20 minutes that you turn on. Maybe you don't, maybe I'm the only one that turns on the television when it doesn't need to be on. But if you have some other habit, give yourself 10, 20, 15 minutes to read this thing. Bring something that feeds you. Try to find ways to connect with the world around you. Try to find ways to get outside yourself. This church is so great at that. Whether it's picking up food, I know Kevin sits in line at the food pantry. I know Sarah and Calvin were picking up turkeys the other day. I know all kinds of you do different things. Maybe you're in a 12-step program and you get to sit with somebody next to you and you get to realize you're not alone. It can be anything that helps you get outside of yourself and you can walk away and think, okay, God's walking with me in this. In my bag, I want to have ways that I can connect with other human beings, especially when I'm really worried, especially when I'm really upset. How is it that I can be reminded that God is with me? Anything that helps us stay present and safe enough to be able to say, God is with me. Another thing we're really good at in the United States, it's probably true around the world, but I admit I don't get to travel very much, is, we don't do waiting very well. As anybody else, I know there are a few people here that have done this, but somebody says, oh, I really want that book. Or, I just read this book, blah, 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 and by the end of the conversation, you've already ordered it and it should be delivered tomorrow. If you've never done that, God love you. I'm guilty as charged, and I could point out people that I won't. We don't wait. We scroll and wonder. My daughter said to me, my generation, we need the message delivered to us like this. We don't look at these long things. God is calling us to wait and wonder. Because no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what you're afraid of or worried about, you will see God's grace break through. Whether you're in deep grief or rage, God's grace will break through in those moments. There was a young man last night on this show alone, and he had been out in the woods all his life. He just was the perfect candidate for this. He'd done everything right, except he was sitting by his campfire, and whatever it is, you can tell I'm not an outdoors person, whatever it was that he had either brought or they had given him, fell into the fire and it had disintegrated. So he had no way to have fire or heat. And he kept saying to himself, if I can't have fire or heat, if I can't have light, I can't stay here. But he didn't give in. He had learned, a mentor of his years ago had taught him how to do this thing with wood. Some of you may know how to do it, I don't. But he kept doing it, and he carved it correctly, and he found just the right stone. And it took him like all day. And he'd do it, and he'd go over and over and over again. It would break apart, and he'd have to walk away. He'd come back, and he'd start over. He'd start over again, and all of a sudden, end of the day, he finally made fire. Gave thanks for the mentor that had taught him this trick. And then, of course, he started worrying about how he was going to keep it going and what would happen because this was going to go out and this was all going to go to hell and he was going to have to do this all over again. And then all of a sudden he said, stop. I have a fire right now. I can be warm right now. I got what I needed right now. He had to do it. He didn't get to be complacent. He didn't get to sit and go, oh God, please provide me with fire. He had to engage in getting fire, but he did. And so as we enter this Advent, I invite us to wonder how it is that we embark on this journey kind of on our own. We are in community. But how is it that actually making room for God, making space for the holy, how is it that that could change you? How is it that that could give you hope on a day when maybe you're discouraged, maybe you're worried, maybe there's much in this world out of your control? God's been there before. God has seen these stories before. And we must remember that God is with us. Emmanuel, God is with us. In Kate Fuller's words, may this Advent be the new beginning as we learn to live by the light. If only the one you made that one day. Of your coming promises, O God, glimpsing the world through tears, while also seeing something sacred shining through too. Our truth, our light, our promise incarnate. Amen. Life sometimes can feel like it's trying to blow out the flame of God. Let hope, let God Let something in your day not blow out that flame, at least for you on this.